Today's topic is hexadecimal subtraction. The method for carrying out hexadecimal subtraction is the same as the one that's used for decimal subtraction, in that we place two numbers one under the other and begin subtraction from the right-hand column. We also may need to borrow from the adjacent column. The best way to show hexadecimal subtraction is by examples. So in this presentation, there are 4 examples. The first one here, we have df minus 4e. As you can see, we have the hex table with the decimal equivalent. I would recommend that you use this and write this down when you're doing the exercises, as you'll find it's much easier to do any conversions. In the first column, we have f minus e. Translating that to decimal, that's 15 minus 14. The result is 1. So 1 in decimal is equivalent to 1 in hexadecimal, so we can just place 1 in the answer section and move on to the next column. In the second column, we have d minus 4. In decimal, this is 13 minus 4. The result of this calculation is 9. 9 in decimal is the same as 9 in hexadecimal, so we can place the 9 directly in the answer table. So the answer then would be 91. Moving on to our second hexadecimal example. Here we have FD minus 1, 2. Again, you can see that I have the hexadecimal table with its decimal equivalents. In the first column, we have D minus 2. Translating that into decimal, that's 13 minus 2. The result of the calculation is 11. 11 in decimal is equivalent to B in hexadecimal, so we place B as the answer in that column. In the second column, we have F minus 1. In decimal, this is 15 minus 1. The result of that calculation is 14. 14 in decimal is equivalent to 13 in hexadecimal, so we can place E in that particular column. Moving on to hexadecimal example 3, this one is a little bit more complex. We have 19D1 minus 24E, and again you can see the hexadecimal to decimal translation table there. Column 1 has 1 minus E. Translating that to decimal, that is 1 minus 14. This isn't possible, so we have to borrow 1 from the next column. So we're borrowing 1 from this column. We score out D, and that becomes C. And then we add 1 onto the column where it's needed. So we add 16 plus 1. So looking at our first column, we have 16 plus 1 minus E. So changing that to decimal, that becomes 17 minus 14. And the result then would be 3. As 3 in decimal is the same as 3 in hexadecimal, we don't actually have to convert that number. We can simply place it in the answer section, which has been done here. Looking at our second column, we now have C minus 4. So C minus 4 is equivalent to 12 minus 4 in decimal, the result being 8. So 8 in decimal is the same as 8 in hexadecimal, so we can just put 8 in the answer column. In our third column, we have 9 minus 2. 9 minus 2 is 7. So again, we don't have to convert that. We can just put 7 in the actual answer column. And the fourth column, we have 1 minus 0. So 1 minus 0, we can just place 1 in the answer. Okay, moving on to hexadecimal example 4. Again, this is a little bit more complex. We have 1328 minus 2bc. And as you can see, I do have the conversion table there. Column 1 has 8 minus c. Translating that into decimal, that's 8 minus 12, and we can't do that. So we have to borrow 1 from the next column. So we take 1 away from the next column, and that becomes 1. And then we add 16 on to the first column. So that's 16 plus 8. So 16 plus 8 minus c in decimal is 24 minus 12, which is equal to 12. So all we have to do is we have to translate 12 in decimal into hexadecimal, and the result of that is C. Moving on to our second column, we have 1 minus B. We can't actually complete that calculation, so we have to borrow 1 from the next column. So we borrow 1 from this column, that one becomes 2, and then we add 16 across to the second column. So looking at our second column, we now have 16 plus 1 minus b. So that is equivalent to 17 minus 11 in decimal, and the result is 6. 6 in decimal is the same as 6 in hexadecimal, so we can just put in our result in the answer section there. So looking at our third column, we have 2 minus 2, which you can see here, and the result is 0, so we just put 0 in. In our fourth column, we have 1 minus 0, so the result of that is 1. So again, we can just put that into the last column. Okay, what I would suggest you do is watch this video again if you require, and stop and start in places that suit yourself. Complete the hexadecimal subtraction exercises that are on Canvas, and make a note of any questions that you have, and you can ask those in the online live tutorial, and you'll find the link for that in Canvas also. Thank you for listening.